This is WLBT Law Call.
Well, good evening. I'm Morgan Dukes, in for Tamika, who's on assignment with the Red Cross. And it's time now for another edition of Law Call. And tonight we have two great attorneys with us talking about all about injuries. Now, listen, if you've ever been in an injury, you know you have questions, and usually a long list of questions. So help me welcome to the show, Patrick Maloof and Rocky Wilkins. Both of you, it is so good to see you tonight. And, first of all, let me say hello and thank you for allowing me to be here for Tamika.
Well, thanks for coming in. We appreciate you being here.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to get off to a great start tonight because people have questions about injuries. And when you're injured, you just don't feel good. And of course, the list of questions continue to grow. But let's start with a question that's kind of off the topic a little bit, but it's a necessary question for times like this. And this one comes to us from Kendra. Her question says that, first of all, she is a little off topic because she wants to hear your thoughts, attorneys, on the mask mandate that's expiring this week. It seems like, the mandate says it's time to take it off, but flu season is just around the corner. So what advice do you have for us, Patrick?
Well, I think that's actually a great question because of the timing of it. And quite honestly, I was surprised when the mask mandate expiration wasn't extended. I know that in other states that it was, but I think it's really important to point out the mask mandate, which was allowed to expire by Governor Reeves, does not require that any individual city, municipality follow that. So I believe, and Rocky, you correct me if I'm wrong, the city of Jackson still has a mask mandate. And I know that a lot of businesses that you go to and businesses I've been to just as recently as today are still requiring masks, which I think is a good thing. Rocky?
Yeah, the city of Jackson's mask mandate is still going on. I personally agree with it. My family's going to continue to use masks, and I haven't heard anything different yet from schools saying that they're going to suddenly stop using masks. And so, Kendra, I'm going to go with the mask. I hope you do too, because when flu season hits, it may be a perfect storm with Corona, and it could get real bad again. And it seems like we're starting to slowly climb back out of this and getting back to normal. We've got sports going. It's so nice to see that and have some normalcy in our lives. Kids are back at school. The last thing we want to do is hit the winter months and have to go back to quarantine. Remember that back in March, we were all sitting at home and working from home, and how awful that was. Well, we're back.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully we can stay out.
Oh, yeah. That would be a horrible thing to have another second wave of this come through again. So let's all continue to mask up. Right, gentlemen?
That's right. Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to our next question because, again, tonight we're discussing all about injuries. And this next question comes to us from Mary Ann. And Mary Ann's question says, my husband was diagnosed with silicosis a month ago, and we are struggling. And I'd like to know if there are any legal avenues for us, since we were told it most likely came from his work. He was exposed at work. So, what should you do if you're working hard on the job and then here comes an illness? How would you handle that, Rocky?
Well, I tell you what, go ahead, Rocky.
I'm going to defer to Patrick on that. He has dedicated his life to representing workers that have been injured by asbestos and silicosis. And he and Tim are some of the biggest experts in not only the state, but probably the Southeast or the nation. Patrick, why don't you take that? And if I can add something, I will.
Thank you, Rocky. I appreciate that. A lot of people hear the word asbestos or asbestosis all the time, but they don't hear the word silica or silicosis that much. But these are both dust-borne illnesses, and silicosis, it can be as bad or worse than asbestosis. It's generally gotten, silica actually refers to sand, so it's generally gotten from sandblasting, but can be gotten from a number of different ways, and is commonly received in the workplace going into the lungs. The most important thing I want you to know, Mary Ann, about silicosis is oftentimes that the injury was not in fact caused by the employer. It was caused by some faulty device that the employer bought that he thought was protecting the worker, like your husband. And so oftentimes the defendant is not the employer. This is not a workers' comp issue. And it's more related to the things that your husband used that he thought was protecting himself. So I would say absolutely there's a claim there. Absolutely there are defendants there that knew that these products weren't protecting workers in the workplace, and that they need to call us immediately so we can start action immediately to look at what it was that your husband was doing that could have caused this particular injury.
Let me just add that it's very important, Marianne. Patrick and Tim have tried many asbestos and silica cases. And when you're looking at a lawyer, whether it's an asbestos case, car wreck, or slip and fall, you want to go with someone who has actually been to trial. I've tried many car wreck cases, many trucking cases, and you don't want to go to trial with someone that doesn't have the experience in that particular type of case. And it's something when you're choosing an attorney, you really need to look at, okay, what's your trial record and how many times you've been to trial in my type of case? Because I promise you the other side, they're going to be experienced and you don't want to go up against them if you don't have a good lawyer.
Okay. All right. All about injuries is our topic tonight on Law Call. I'm Morgan Dukes. And our next question comes to us from Kyle. And he has a car accident question. And his question says, my friend's brother was in an accident where the car rolled over several times, but the airbags never deployed. He was seriously injured. The question is, can they sue the manufacturer? Is that a possibility?
I'm going to let Rocky actually answer that one. I believe Rocky's been involved with some airbag cases. So, Rocky, what do you say?
Yeah, our firm certainly handled quite a few airbag cases here at Morgan & Morgan. And what you have is a products liability case, Morgan, and that can be from a defective warning or from a defective design in a product or even from a manufacturing defect. But the most common for those type of cases is probably a warning or a design defect, because these are life safety devices like a seatbelt, and they're supposed to protect you in a wreck. What they're not supposed to do is make it worse. And what I've seen is cases where someone was driving, gets in a wreck, and then a safety device like an airbag breaks their neck or causes permanent injury to their face or scars or burns even from the airbag. It is not supposed to do that. And if you have one of those cases, you may have a products liability case, but the most important thing in a products case is securing the evidence. If you don't call a lawyer immediately so they can send out letters, preserve the evidence, find the vehicle, get the airbag, and not tamper with the evidence. You don't want to do that either. You want to notify all the parties first. You got to do that. Patrick, spoliation or spoiling the evidence can be a big deal. You want to talk about that real quick?
Absolutely, Rocky, and I 100% agree. In fact, I was going to follow up on that very point. I'm always amazed at what an expert can determine from an accident by looking at the evidence that a layperson or even a lawyer doesn't fully understand. And so it's important to know two things about this. Number one, there are specific experts designed in airbag deployment cases, and they know exactly what to look for. Number two, there are things in the vehicle that you and I are not aware of, data that is recorded, that an expert like that can come in and make determinations about the functionality of that airbag that we don't know about. And so it's very important that while we may know where the car is, we need to make sure that car is secure. We need to make sure no one's around it. And we need to make sure that you get an attorney who can go get an expert, get them retained quickly. Someone like Rocky gets an expert in there very quickly to make sure they can get all the most pertinent data they can before someone messes with that vehicle.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we have two great attorneys here, Patrick Maloof and Rocky Wilkins, and they're both personal injury attorneys. And tonight we're talking about all about injuries. When we come back, we're going to get into a wrongful death situation. So stay with us. I'm Morgan Dukes, and you're watching Law Call.
WLBT Law Call with award-winning broadcaster Tamika Smith and personal injury attorneys Tim Porter of the Jackson law firm of Porter Maloof, called one of the winningest firms in the United States, and Jackson personal injury attorney Rocky Wilkins, recognized as Mississippi Trial Lawyer of the Year by the Mississippi Association for Justice. Plus guest attorneys from across the state. Your rights, your calls, live. WLBT Law Call.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Law Call. I'm Morgan Dukes, and I'm in for Tamika tonight, who's working with the Red Cross, but she'll be back soon. And in the meantime, we do have more questions. We're talking about injuries tonight. All about injuries is our topic, and we have two great attorneys here, Patrick Maloof and Rocky Wilkins. And gentlemen, before we go any further, I want to ask this question. What is the statute of limitations when it comes to a personal injury claim? I mean, how long do you have to really enforce that?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I get that question all the time. And it's different from state to state. And it's actually different from tort to tort or cause of action. So one thing could happen to you and it be one time limit. Another thing can happen to be another. Generally in Mississippi, the statute of limitations is 3 years. And that's generally for negligence. So a car wreck, something happens to you, nobody intended for it to happen. It wasn't medical negligence. That's generally 3 years. Now, you have to really cannot assume it's 3 years. You have to look at what's happening. And this is where you get when you call a lawyer is if you have some intentional tort, somebody did something to you on purpose, maybe as little as 1 year. Medical malpractice under the tort reform laws could be as little as 1 year, no more than 2 years. So it really makes a difference. As soon as something's happened that you think you may have a claim, you reach out to a lawyer because you need to find out what that statute is. Rocky, you agree?
I absolutely agree with Patrick. And he brings up some cases have as short as 1 year. And like if you're suing a government agency, like a sheriff or a county-run hospital or a state-run hospital, you have as short as 1 year. And you also have to give them written notice beforehand. And you have to tell them about the case, your damages, who the witnesses are. And if you don't give them that written notice, if it's a Tort Claims Act case, then you can be barred forever from bringing your lawsuit. There's a lot of hurdles to jump through when you have to sue a county or a city, and the statute of limitations is just one of those. So very important.
Wow.
That's right.
So you got to move fast. Basically, that's what
Absolutely.
you're telling us. You got to move fast.
Yes.
You have to
All
move
right.
fast, and you need to find out what exactly you're dealing with quickly. It may be 3 years, so you may have time, but you don't know until you contact a lawyer and get told what your statute of limitations is.
All
That's
right.
right.
Okay, well, let's move on to our next question. And it comes to us from Andrea. And her question is, my uncle was killed in a car accident. He was unmarried with no children, but his nearest living relative, nearest living relative, my dad, can he file a wrongful death suit against the person who caused the wreck? So what say you, gentlemen?
Yeah, what needs to happen is you need to have a determination of wrongful death beneficiaries. And I'm very sorry, to hear about your uncle, that this happens more than we want to think about, where someone loses their life because of a car wreck, because of someone else negligent or not paying attention. But what has to happen is you have to look at different levels of who can recover. And you said that there was no spouse and there are no children. So you go to the second level and you look at the parents and you look at the siblings. And so they would be the ones that would be allowed to legally recover. And you have to go over to Chancery Court here in Hinds County, if that's where the wreck happened, and have what's called a determination of wrongful death beneficiaries, where you have to publish notice in the paper. And then this goes back to the olden days. The bailiff will actually call the name of the person that had died 3 times out in the hallway. And if nobody answers, then the wrongful death beneficiaries will be the ones who are in court that answer the notice, and anyone else can be barred forever for bringing a lawsuit under that name or for that person. So it's very important. You see those legal notices in the paper sometime that say this is notice to the wrongful death beneficiaries. I read all those because you never know it could be one of your cases, or it could be somebody that you know or a friend. But that's why those are in the newspaper, to give public notice to somebody and to a family that their loved one has died.
Oh, wow. Ooh, okay. Well, let's move on, because that sounds like a lot, having to read the newspaper and, search it so carefully, but it's important. That's the point you're making, that it's very, very important. Okay, our next question comes to us from John, and he has a question about his grandfather. His grandfather died from lung cancer last year, and he had been sick for several years before he was finally diagnosed. I think the doctors screwed up and should have diagnosed him earlier. Then maybe he would have had a better chance of survival. Can you sue over a misdiagnosis or a wrong diagnosis? That's what John wants to know. Is that possible, gentlemen?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Morgan, you can, but there's some important things you need to know when you're looking at a lawsuit like this. Number one, you just talked about the statute of limitations, and it's very important to reach out early because the statute of limitations in a medical malpractice case, which is what this would be, anytime you have a claim against a doctor or a hospital, that's referred to a medical malpractice case, or anyone who's practicing medicine. It could be a nurse. That's a medical malpractice case. That statute in Mississippi, because of tort reform, could be as little as 1 year and generally not be more than 2 years. So number one is you can bring the lawsuit, but you must take action quickly. Number two is the determining factor in whether or not you have a claim is going to be made by an expert. And that expert is going to be a doctor who is similarly situated to the doctor that you think may have committed some type of negligence. So you can absolutely bring a claim. But once you retain an expert, and that expert who's similarly situated, same type of doctor, comes in and says, yes, what that doctor did or what that doctor missed did not rise to the level of what a reasonably prudent doctor in that situation should have done. And that's the language that you're going to hear. But the overriding message is you're going to have an expert and you're going to have to know your statute. So you can bring a claim, but you need to let someone, you need to let a lawyer know now, Rocky handles these, we handle these, but you got to get out in front of this to know your statute, get an expert retained, and find out if you have a case. So,
okay. But you have one. Okay. Patrick Maloof and Rocky Wilkins are our personal injury attorneys tonight. I'm Morgan Dukes. And when we come back, we'll take more of your questions right here on Law Call. If you have questions for Rocky Wilkins, you can reach him at Morgan & Morgan right here in Jackson. Just go to the website, www.forthepeople.com. Or if you have questions for Patrick Maloof, you can reach him here in Jackson at Porter & Maloof. And the telephone number is 601-957-1173. Or you can find him online at www.portermaloof.com. I'm Morgan Dukes, and I'm in for Tamika tonight. And she is away with the Red Cross doing some work, but she'll be back soon. In the meantime, these two great attorneys have been answering your questions all about injuries. It happens from time to time. We find ourselves in a situation where we may need an attorney. If that's the case, please give one of these fine attorneys a call. Now, let's get back to more questions because we want to answer as many as we can while we have the time. And this question comes to us from Sam. Sam's question is, I was in a collision that injured my knees very badly. I had to go to physical therapy for 3 months. I just received an offer of $17,000 from the insurance company, of which $12,000 is in medical bills. I thought that you were supposed to get at least 2 times your medical bills. Is this a fair offer? Now, gentlemen, I know a lot of people who have that question. Once they get that offer, they always wonder, is it fair? Is it right?
No, that's going to be my answer.
That's the short answer, huh?
All the facts about the case, Sam, but let me tell you, the insurance company, for somebody that caused a wreck against you, is going to try and give you the best, worst offer they can give you to make you take it. They want to try to save as much money for their insured. They are not in the business of helping you against their insured. They're in the business of saving all that money for an insurance company. Now, you said, is the norm 2 times medical bills? When I first started practicing and Patrick first started practicing almost 20 years ago, buddy, I remember. But when we started practicing a long time ago, you could get 3-4 times your medical bills with a phone call to an adjuster here in Jackson, and they'd work with you, and you'd say, this is a really good plaintiff. He's well known in the community, and he's got these injuries. Nowadays, you have very little personal contact with these insurance companies. It's basically, a computer, whether it's in Atlanta or Hartford, Connecticut, or New York City. And they take the data that you send them, the medical records, medical bills, the lost wages, they run it through a computer and they come out with a number. And there's very little authority that those adjusters have anymore. Whereas before, you used to be able to talk to the company, talk to a person, and sometimes get the case resolved for a little bit more than they might pay somebody else. So what we've had to do now is we file a lot more lawsuits over car wreck cases than we did in the days before. And we're being forced to, because the insurance company wants to lowball us. And so you need to talk to a lawyer, because I don't think that's a good offer.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Rocky. And, I used to do some defense work, so I work with adjusters. And the way adjusters earn their keep, so to speak, at the insurance company is to pay out as little money as possible. So you can pretty much rest assured that when they're putting a number out there, they don't have your best interest in mind. They have their job security in mind. And so once you know that they're not out there just throwing numbers at you that are really fair like they should be. And that's just the way the system is set up. And so you'll find oftentimes once you retain counsel, all of a sudden then the number goes way up. So as it should, because we know what you should be receiving as opposed to what the adjuster's offering.
Which brings to mind then, when people are in need of an attorney, they should call you without doubt, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Now,
Call
do
us
you,
without doubt.
Biased, but yeah, I would call Patrick too.
well, does either one of you offer free consultations? Is that an option?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We both offer free consultations. You can call us, you can come see us. We work off a contingency fee, so we don't get paid unless you do. Absolutely free to come see us, right, Rocky?
That's right. That's the way that most personal injury attorneys work that way. And what that does is it allows somebody who has been hurt really bad, who can't eat, who can't afford to eat or work, to get good legal representation against a big company or corporation or insurance company. So it's a very important right that you have.
I like it. I like it. I like it. So Patrick Maloof is the attorney you need to call, as well as Rocky Wilkins. Give these gentlemen a call so we can make sure that you're okay. You won't have to be on the show with your questions. Listen, thank you, gentlemen. I so enjoyed being with you. And Tamika will be back soon. Until next time, I'm Morgan Dukes. Good night, everybody, from all of us at LawCall.
We appreciate you.